3,000 years ago, in the valley of Elah, two armies stood staring at each other across a dry riverbed. On one ridge camped the Philistines, iron chariots, bronze shields, professional soldiers of the coastal cities. On the other stood the army of Israel, farmers and shepherds with spears, led by a king named Saul. For 40 days, neither army moved, because every morning, the same thing happened. A man walked out from the Philistine line, except that man was barely the word for him. His name was Goliath of Gath. He stood over 9 feet tall. His bronze armor weighed more than a grown shepherd. The iron point of his spear alone was heavier than a sword, and the shaft of it was like a weaver's beam. And every morning and every evening, his voice rolled up both hillsides like thunder. "Choose a man and send him down to me. If he is able to fight me and kill me, we will be your servants. But if I kill him, you will serve us. This day I defy the armies of Israel." And when the soldiers of Israel heard those words, they ran from the battle line in great fear. Day after day, 40 days, nobody went down. Not the bravest captain, not the strongest soldier, not even King Saul himself, who stood a head taller than any man in Israel, and who had once been fearless. An entire army, frozen by the voice of one man. 20 kilometers away, in the hills outside Bethlehem, there was a boy watching sheep. His name was David. He was the youngest of 8 brothers, so young, and so far down the list, that when the prophet Samuel had come to visit his family, his own father almost forgot to call him in from the field. He carried no sword. He had never worn armor. What he had was a staff, a sling, and a kind of stubborn, blazing certainty that God was not a theory. His 3 oldest brothers were soldiers in Saul's army, and one morning, his father Jesse handed him bread and cheese and told him to go check if they were still alive. David reached the camp just as the army was marching out to the battle line, shouting the war cry. And then he watched the same ritual the army had watched for 40 days. The giant walked out. The challenge rolled up the hillside, and the men of Israel ran. The boy stood there, holding bread, genuinely confused, and he asked the question that nobody else was asking. Who is this Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? His oldest brother heard him and burned with anger. Why did you even come here? Who's watching those few sheep of yours? I know how proud you are. You just came to watch the battle. Heavy words, but there was no battle to watch. Only a silence with a giant's voice in it. Someone reported the boy's question to the king. Saul sent for him, and the king looked at the shepherd standing in his tent and said what everyone was thinking. You cannot go and fight this Philistine. You are only a boy. He has been a man of war since his youth. David didn't argue about his size. He told a story instead. Your servant kept his father's sheep. When a lion came, or a bear, and took a lamb from the flock, I went after it, and struck it, and rescued the lamb from its mouth. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. And this Philistine will be like one of them, because the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Saul had nothing left to offer but his own armor. They dressed the boy in a king's bronze. David took 2 steps and stopped. I cannot walk in these. I have not tested them. And he took it all off. Then he took his staff in his hand. And he went down to the brook in the valley, the dry riverbed between the 2 armies, where a thin stream still ran, and he chose 5 smooth stones and put them in his shepherd's bag. 5 stones, a sling, a staff. That was the entire arsenal of the man walking out to meet the most feared warrior alive. Goliath saw something moving toward him and squinted. And when he realized he was looking at a boy, ruddy, handsome, holding a stick, the giant felt something he had not felt in 40 days. He felt insulted. Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks? And he cursed David by his gods. Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." The boy's answer crossed the valley floor in 3,000 years without losing a word. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and the whole earth will know that there is a God in Israel." The giant moved first, rising, closing in to attack. And David did the thing nobody does, the thing that armies tell stories about for 3,000 years. He ran toward the giant. His hand went into the bag. The sling came alive over his head, once, twice, and a single smooth stone left the leather like a hawk dropping out of the sun. It struck the Philistine in the forehead and sank in. And Goliath of Gath, the terror of 40 days, the voice that froze an army, fell face down upon the ground. For one long breath, the whole valley was silent. The boy had no sword, so he ran and stood over the giant, and with the Philistine's own blade, he finished what the stone had begun. The champion of Gath was dead, killed by a shepherd, with a stone the brook had been polishing for him since before he was born. Then sound came back to the world. The men of Israel rose with a shout that shook the valley, and the army that had hidden for 40 days came pouring down the ridge like a flood. The Philistines saw their champion dead and ran. The boy who had arrived that morning carrying bread stood in the middle of it all, holding a sword far too big for him. David would carry many things after that day: a harp for a broken king, a crown in time, a promise that out of his family line would come a king whose kingdom would never end. But he learned the thing that mattered before any of it, alone, in a field, between a lion and a lamb. The battle was never about the size of the warrior. The battle belongs to the Lord. And the God who guided a stone across the valley of Elah has not grown smaller since.